Roll call, I think we have George Anderson here.
Yep.
Chris Blackstone.
Here.
Scott Yu, Julia, Joe, and Zach. We have and we have guests, Lindsay, Bill Kaplan, and members of the audience.
And the guests on Zoom.
Yes. And, remote for community power with smartphone engine.
Okay, do you want to start with any public comments and also we can provide some time for that?
Okay, we just need a motion to approve the November 25th minutes. If everyone had a chance to review those. Yeah. Motion to approve. Second? Yep. Second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. No opposed? Okay.
I'll just abstain since I wasn't here
Yeah, that's
yet
fair.
then.
Thank you. Yeah.
Chris is a stand, right?
Yeah. Okay, minutes from November 25th pass.
Are we ready to let him do his thing? Can I ask if we can?
Yes, we can absolutely accommodate that.
Okay, Mark.
You ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready to go. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. All right, let me just do a little quick intro here and then we'll just.
Bollinger works for Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire. We're Newmarket Community Power. We are associated with them. I have asked, I think everybody's kind of familiar with what net metering is. If you have a solar panel on your house, it generates electricity. That electricity goes out to the grid, and it kind of, you're taking electricity in, but you're also putting electricity out. So it kind of nets out. There's another concept called group net metering, where the community can join an association, whatever you want to call it, that has solar energy, and that solar panels can be located anywhere in the grid. And then they work out a plan where community, municipal community or school can get some of the benefit of the net metering portion. So what I've asked Mark to do is give us a primer or net metering 101 so that we understand what net metering is. Towards the end of 2026, Community Power has a system coming online, and you may want to take advantage of joining that group net metering. But before we do join that group net metering, I think it's important to get a good understanding of what group net metering is and how it works.
So I gave a quick overview, Mark. With that, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, sounds great. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm assuming you can hear me, and I'm hoping you can see my screen as well. But please jump in and let me know if you cannot either hear me or see me. Thanks everybody for having me in tonight. My name is Mark Bollinger. I am the Director of Projects and Programs for the Community Power Coalition in New Hampshire. And Joe invited me in tonight to talk a little bit about group net metering, which I understand that Newmarket is potentially interested in. What?
Yeah, your audio cut out. Sorry.
Okay, no worries.
I'm trying to think like, oh my gosh, her name is familiar, but I don't know why.
I came here to a couple of meetings before.
Yeah, but before that,
George is officially the conservation liaison person.
were you on the Conservation Commission like in 2017-ish?
Yes, I've been on it for kind of a long time.
I was on it in 2017. Maybe that's why I remember.
Probably because it switches like in April.
Did you send those invoices?
So
Yeah, I
will you-
think I left in 2017, around April-ish.
That would have been the.
Testing,
crossover
1, 2.
line, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was on it in a couple of other towns, so sometimes I came here to meetings that you folks were having, because although it's a great bay and not a freshwater lake, because some of
Yeah.
the places I've lived had freshwater lakes, and so some of the water issues were intriguing even way back
You're like
then.
all over the place.
No, I just sit, I'm like a little rat in a maze now. I'm here, or I go where I got food, it's just,
Well, welcome here.
yeah. Thank you.
Newmarket celebrity.
I don't know about that.
I don't know.
Newmarket's a lot to celebrate, that's for sure.
Ah.
When I lived up north, I used to come down here sometimes on Saturdays and just pretend like I lived here, because it felt so big compared to being way up north in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
So it felt like, oh my God, they got lattes, what's a latte? I'm gonna drink that, and it felt so exciting to come
Where up north
down
did you
here.
live?
I lived in Lake Region, I lived
Oh,
in
in
Bristol,
Lake
I
Region.
was with Newfound for a while.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me, Mark?
We can't hear you.
Try it. Well, I guess you're hooked up, but select the speaker on your laptop. So, unmute and then is back to the right.
Julie, did you overlap Andrea Fry maybe on the Conservation Commission?
Yes, she was the accounting person. I think she did the financial
Martin
statements, did she?
She was, I don't know
Oh,
what her
maybe.
role, and then she went with Lamprey River Advisory Council for a long time.
Yes, she was on the conservation.
Yeah, so she's kind of
commission.
rotated there too, 'cause she was Conservation, Lamprey River, LRAC,
Yeah.
Lamprey Advisory
Yeah, I think
Council.
we're close. We might-
And it's lucky to have her back in the game now. She teaches,
All right, we're gonna-
8th grade at the high school, well, junior high
Oh,
school.
wow,
We're gonna,
Science.
cool.
it's
So
definitely
she
gonna
has a
get
good
feedback,
background to
I'm
bring to some
pretty
of
sure.
the things that we wonder about, but she can
I
like
mean, you could try this one, it'll still.
frame
Yeah.
it and think in a little bit.
that's cool.
Yeah. Can you try it again? Talk a little bit?
Sure, yeah. Can you hear me now?
Unfortunately, that's the max output for his laptop.
Well, you wanna, give it a shot, Mark?
Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. I think some of the people further away can't.
Well, we could also wiggle our chairs over
yeah, we
there.
can go closer.
Why don't we just go closer? Because this is turning into silliness.
Okay,
Wait, wait, 1 second while I do one thing.
okay.
Someone wants to sit on our side.
I can hear him from here.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
So just have it go.
Okay.
Oh, you don't, never mind.
No, we're good.
Okay, sorry.
All right, Mark, go for it.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me, and hopefully you can see my screen. I had sort of gone through this slide already, just introducing myself, saying thank you for having me over tonight. And my apologies for putting you through Zoom hell. It seems like it's par for the course. Let me just go to the next slide. So this is kind of a high-level outline of what I'll run through here tonight. I'll start with a kind of a 30,000-foot overview of what group net metering is and how it works on kind of a group net metering 101 type introductory level. Then I will get into how these projects are typically structured between what's known as the group host and group members. And I'll do that by providing some numerical examples and diagrams. Then I'll talk a little bit about CPC&H's involvement with group net metering. Right now we're working with two different projects, one of them further along than the other. And finally, I'll conclude with a brief sort of analysis and comparison to some information that I believe Kearsarge Energy provided to Newmarket maybe last fall. Joe sent that over to me as a little bit of context for what you all were hoping to better understand. So hopefully you're hearing me. If you have any questions, just feel free to jump in at any time and interrupt me, please. I want to make sure that I'm covering information that is relevant to what you all want to learn. So let me move on. So at the highest level, group net metering, you can think of that as the way that New Hampshire currently does or implements what's known as community solar. So the term community solar is kind of a generic term that's used throughout the US to describe kind of mid-scale projects, maybe sub 5 megawatt projects. So community scale projects that are generally built to kind of share their output with multiple subscribers. And there are a couple of drivers of this particular model. One is to try and capture economies of scale by building projects that are larger than your typical on-site or rooftop solar project. And another is to provide renters and other folks who may not have good sites for residential solar, to provide them with a way to be able to benefit from solar generation. In most cases, these community solar programs are implemented at the state level, and they are an extension of a state's net metering program, and that is indeed the case in New Hampshire, where community solar is implemented through what's known as group net metering. And group net metering is just kind of a slightly different version from the typical net metering that you probably all know all about already.
Does everyone here have an understanding of net metering?
Sorry, was that a question or?
Oh, you heard us, good. No, I was just making sure that everyone here had an understanding of what general net metering is, so we're good.
Okay, great. And just so you know, your audio was soft at first, but it came in more strongly at the end. So that's
that
great.
makes sense. I moved closer to the mic.
Okay. And there's no. Okay. So basically, on this slide, I just wanted to point out that group net metering requires at least two parties, the group host, and then at least one group member. So the group host is what the state considers to be the customer generator. So this is the entity that has kind of built the project and typically owns the project. And the project can be either sort of a typical behind the meter project that is tied to a specific load. So for example, it could be a rooftop solar project that is tied into the building on which it sits. And in that instance, the PV system would be generating much more power than the building itself consumes. And so the excess would be shared with subscribers. So that's one way to do it. Another model is to build a kind of a standalone ground-mounted system out in a field somewhere. And in that case, that's not tied to a specific load. And so it is exporting the vast majority of its generation. And various subscribers are at least virtually absorbing that generation. To be fully compensated, right now in New Hampshire, it's important that the host stay on utility default service, because the net metering credits are coming from whoever your local utility is, and so it's important that the host be served by that local utility. Group members, on the other hand, do not have to take supply from the local utility. They can take supply from whomever they want, whether it's a competitive electricity supplier or a community power program like Newmarket Community Power. But there is a restriction that members have to be in the same utility service territory as the host. So if the project is located in Eversource territory, for example, all of the subscribers also have to be in Eversource as well. And the other requirement to point out here is that the combined annual load of all of the subscribers or group members must exceed the annual generation from the host's project. So they want to make sure that each project is fully subscribed and has enough load to absorb the output of the project. Continuing along here, the amount of compensation is dictated by the size of the project, and also the composition of who can be subscribers also varies somewhat by project size. So for smaller projects that are under 100 kW, the compensation consists of the supply rate, the transmission rate, and then 25% of the distribution rate. And subscribers can be really any type of electricity customer, residential, commercial, or municipal. Once you get up into above 100 kW up to 1 megawatt, then you lose the transmission and distribution portion of the compensation, and you're compensated solely at the utility default supply rate. Once compensation remains at just the default supply rate. And in this case, all subscribers must be governmental load, whether that's local, state, or even federal. So the way this typically works, it's really important to understand that the host really needs member load in order to access the net metering credit. So I mentioned earlier how there's a requirement that the project must be fully subscribed, that the combined annual load of all subscribers must exceed the project's generation. And because of that, the host is really in need of subscribers and needs to look for ways to entice them to subscribe. And the way they typically do that is by offering some share of the net metering credit. So the host is going to earn the full net metering credit, and then what they do is they pass through some portion of that to subscribers. And in most cases, they don't charge any fees or anything to subscribe either. So this is essentially free money to subscribers. By pledging their load to a project, they will automatically get some share of the net metering credit that's earned by the project. Those shares are typically proportional to the amount of load that each account has subscribed, but it doesn't have to be that way. There's a fair amount of flexibility in how the state has set this up, but in most cases, the member's share of the project's output is in proportion to the amount of load that each member has subscribed. And then compensation comes in the form of either monthly checks from the host, or more recently they've set up a way to do this via on-bill crediting. So you would get a credit directly on your electricity bill. So here is a numerical example of what this might look like. This is a fairly complicated slide, so I'm not going to dwell on this, but I wanted to include it in the deck, and I did send the deck over to Joe before the presentation, so hopefully he will distribute a copy of it, and anyone who wants to kind of drill down more deeply into how these numbers are derived can do that on this slide by checking out the public school example down here at the bottom. So in this case, we've got 5 different group members. They're all governmental loads subscribed to this 3.25 megawatt PV project. The host is also considered a member, and they take the vast majority of the project's output and receive the majority of compensation in exchange for having taken the risk of building the project and finance the project. But you can see here that some of these different subscribers do receive a fair amount of compensation depending on how large their subscribed load is. And I think that's all I'm going to say about this one, but if anyone has any questions on that, you can always reach out to me. And instead, I think I'll move on to a simpler example on the next slide. But first, let me pause and just make sure that you're still hearing me okay.
Yes.
Is that okay? Okay, good. So this is a much simpler way to think about this by kind of categorizing or breaking different account types out into small, medium, and large. And you can see that their annual subscribed load increases by a factor of 10 here, as does their compensation. And so this table assumes that the net metering credit is 10 cents a kilowatt hour, and that group members will receive 12.5% of that net metering credit, which equates to 1.25 cents per kilowatt hour subscribed. So this is really just intended to give you an idea for the level of annual compensation that different sized accounts might earn through group net metering. So now I guess I'll just talk a little bit about maybe how and why CPC&H has gotten involved with group net metering. We did not set out to support projects in this way. If we had our preference, we would support projects or these types of projects more directly by ideally having them directly serve our members' load, and then compensating them for the considerable value that they provide to the local grid. That value consists of avoided energy costs, avoided capacity costs, avoided ancillary services and transmission costs. You also avoid line losses by interconnecting the project to the distribution system rather than transmission system. And when you add up all of these avoided costs, you see that these community scale projects can provide significant value that would exceed the value of group net metering. But because of this issue known as load settlement in New Hampshire, we and other suppliers cannot currently realize the full value that these projects actually provide. And so as a result of that, we have sort of pivoted to the next best alternative, which at the moment is group net metering. And so within the past year or so, we've dipped our toes into the water through a nearly 5 megawatt PV project called Poverty Plains Solar that is in Warner, New Hampshire, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. And then more recently, we've issued our first request for proposals, or RFP, under our annual solicitation program to increase renewable energy, which we refer to as Aspire. And that RFP resulted in the selection of a second roughly 5 megawatt project, which is called Garland Pit Solar, and that one is up in Conway.
Mark,
Before you move on,
Mark, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Sorry about that. I was just going to ask you to go over load settlement a little bit more in detail, please.
Yeah, so that's actually, it's a pretty complicated thing. It's basically you can think of it as a reconciliation between the wholesale load, like our wholesale load and our retail load. I think that those two things would be highly correlated, and theoretically they should be. Really, the only difference between the two should be line losses. At the wholesale level, that's kind of at the ISO New England level. That power gets delivered to retail meters, and there are some losses there. So theoretically, that should be the only difference. But because New Hampshire, and Eversource in particular, does not really have much of a deployment of interval meters or smart metering, most of our load is settled against or settled assuming that individual customers follow what's known as a class average load profile. So in other words, utilities are just assuming that your hourly consumption kind of matches some average that they've seen in the past. And so what it means is that if you build one of these solar projects that's generating, during certain times of the day, let's say, during solar noon, it is injecting power into the grid midday, but the utility can't really see that because they're assuming that folks are just kind of consuming power according to these class average load profiles. As a result, if someone were to, let's say, shift their load in a way that was advantageous, shift their load to lower cost hours, let's say, we wouldn't really get credit for that. Like, we'd see that on the wholesale side, but we can't really reconcile that on the retail side because of the lack of smart metering. And so as a result, that benefit gets socialized and spread across all suppliers in the region. So we get some amount of benefit out of it, but it's highly diluted. And what that means is that even though these projects provide a lot of value to the system, we're only able to realize a small percentage of that, which means that if we want to support these projects, we can't pay them the full value that they provide because we only see a small portion of it. It gets pretty complicated, but I think maybe I'll just leave it there unless you have any follow-up questions.
No, that was really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, great. So here's the Poverty Plains site as of mid-November. This is a drone shot. The project is located right along I-89 North between Contoocook and Warner. It's on an old gravel pit. You can see over here, this is I-89 northbound, just right by on the left-hand side here by the row of pine trees. And the project is highly visible from the highway if you're driving that way. These crates that you see here are full of modules, which started to go up shortly after this photo was taken. And we are told right now that the project is on schedule to be live or be energized in May of this year. So that's good news. And we have been able to fully subscribe this project. So at present, there's no more room for new subscribers with the Poverty Plains project. But we did recently start to engage with this Garland Pit Solar project, which was the project selected through our first Aspire RFP. This project is located in Conway, or closer to East Conway. You can see the New Hampshire-Maine border right here. This too is an old gravel pit, so it's a good site from that perspective. It's a previously disturbed site. You can see the big kind of gash running through the site. That is a transmission line corridor, which is good for interconnection. So this site seems to be favorable. The project has recently run into a little bit of an interconnection issue that they're trying to iron out. So there's a little bit of uncertainty here right now, but we are hoping to be able to work through that and proceed with this project. I thought I'd just take a few minutes to describe how this works when CPC&H is involved in these projects. And so, the first thing that happens obviously is the host finds a site and develops a solar project that is of interest to CPC&H. We would then negotiate and enter into a 20-year power purchase agreement with the host. And as part of that, we would agree to kind of take on the group member recruitment and management and all of the other administrative aspects. And we would recruit those municipal loads, in this case in Eversource territory, by promising them 12.5% of the net metering credit. Once the project comes online, Eversource pays the host 100% of the credit. The host passes that through to us in its entirety, and then we also get the RECs, or renewable energy certificates, which you can think of as kind of an accounting instrument that conveys the attributes of the underlying generation. And the RECs are what we need to buy in order to support the renewable energy content that's in the electricity products that we sell. The next thing that happens is we pay the host the agreed upon PPA price per kilowatt hour, and we also pay the group members 12.5% of the net metering credit. So at the end of the day, basically four things happen. The solar project gets built, which is the whole idea here really. The host gets a stable PPA price, which it values quite a bit. It wants to know in advance what its revenue is going to be, and the net metering credit varies every 6 months with the utility default supply rate. So if they can swap that out for a fixed PPA price, they really like that. The subscribers get, a significant payment of, roughly 1 cent per kilowatt hour on average over time. And then CPC&H gets RECs that are most likely competitively priced. So it's kind of a, win-win all around in this case. Here's a kind of a schematic of what I just described on the prior slide. So maybe just to reinforce this, we've got the Garland Solar project in the middle. It generates energy and capacity and so on, and injects that into Eversource's distribution system. In exchange, it receives 100% of the net metering credit, which goes to the group host. The group host passes all of that net metering credit over to CPC&H in exchange for the PPA price, which we pay to the group host. And then we also pay out 12.5% of the net metering credit to group members. And so this is how we do it. We would not have to be involved with this project. It's entirely possible that the group host can kind of pull this off on their own. But having CPC&H involved does add value in at least 4 ways that I've listed here in this blue box. First, as I already mentioned, we basically allow the group host to swap out a variable net metering credit in exchange for a fixed PPA price, which they like and which supports the financing of the project. This PPA is a 20-year contract, which is longer than the 15 years of net metering that is left in New Hampshire. So currently net metering is only on the books through 2040 in New Hampshire, and that's only about 15 years away now. We also take on the group formation and management, so we remove an administrative burden from the developer, and they like that as well. And then finally, we take the RECs, which kind of means they don't have to worry about marketing those either. So that's how it flows. And then if we want to put some numbers on what this arrangement would look like today, or not today, but starting in February, if the project were operating today, that's what this slide shows you. Starting in February and continuing through July, Eversource's default supply rate will be about 11.3 cents. That is also equal to, or that will equal, the net metering credit. And so if Garland Pit were already operational, over this 6-month period, Eversource would pay the group host 11.3 cents per kilowatt hour. They would forward that to CPC&H in exchange for the agreed upon PPA price. We in turn would then pay group members 1.4 cents per kilowatt hour, which is simply equal to 12.5% of the 11.3 cent credit. We would take all of the RECs, and those RECs would cost us whatever the agreed upon PPA price is, minus 9.89 cents per kilowatt hour, and that 9.89 cents is simply the net metering credit of 11.3 minus the 1.4 cents that we have paid out to group members. And so again, the net effect on each party, the group host earns the PPA price. Group members in this case would earn 1.4 cents per kilowatt hour subscribed, and CPC&H would buy RECs at a significant discount to market. All right, so getting close to the end here, I thought I would just maybe walk through the example that Kearsarge had provided to Newmarket in that brochure handout that I believe they sent you last fall. What I've done here is I've added letters to these 5 columns, and then I've sort of annotated or described what's going on in those columns, just in case that wasn't clear. So this example that Kearsarge pulled together assumes that Newmarket consumed or had a load of 1 million kilowatt hours over the last 12 months. So that's really the starting point, is to determine what your historical consumption looks like, as that's really probably the best measure of what your future consumption is going to look like as well. So they're assuming 1 million kilowatt hours. And so what they're showing in column A is really your share, or Newmarket's share, of the project output. And they're starting at 900,000 instead of 1 million because they're building in a 10% cushion to help ensure that the project always stays fully subscribed. So in other words, they're trying to guard against a situation where going forward, you don't consume as much electricity as you have historically. So they kind of handicap your historical consumption by 10%. And that is common practice throughout the group net metering industry, that at least that I've seen. So they start you out with a 900,000 kilowatt hour share. That decreases over time by 0.5% per year to reflect the expected solar performance degradation of the project. And half a percent per year degradation is also a standard industry assumption. Column B is their projection of what the net metering credit will look like. So this, you could also think of this as the Eversource default supply rate. So in other words, they project that it would start at 11.2 cents in year one and then escalate at 2.5% per year over the full 20-year period. Column C is just A times B, basically showing the total value of the credits earned by sort of your share of the project. Column D just multiplies column C by 10%. So in this case, Kearsarge would share 10% of those credits with you. And then column E simply accumulates the payments in column D. So that's what you're looking at here. And then if I go to the next slide, this is exactly the same table, but in this case, I've added this these green numbers here to reflect what this would look like at a 12.5% sharing ratio instead of 10%. And so what you can see is that over the 20-year period, 12.5% nets you roughly $61,000 more than 10%. The other difference that I would call out here is that our contract with subscribers allows subscribers to exit from the project with just 12 months notice if they need to for whatever reason. And that is as flexible as I've seen in the market. I think Kearsarge typically looks for at least a 5-year commitment and possibly even a 10, or sometimes if they can get it, they'll try to get a 20-year commitment out of subscribers as well. So I think one advantage we offer besides the 12.5% sharing ratio is also the flexibility to get out in just a year if you need to. Let's see. Okay, and so I think this is my last slide. If Newmarket is interested in this sort of arrangement, really the first step, as I mentioned earlier, is to really gather or look around at your municipal loads and gather your historical consumption data to see, what you've consumed in the most recent 12-month period. You also want to think about whether any of these accounts or buildings already have on-site generation, or whether you are contemplating adding on-site generation in the kind of foreseeable future, because that may impact how much of that load will be available to subscribe to the project. Also, if you have accounts that are already participating in other group net metering projects, that's important to know as well. If you're interested in working with CPC&H on this, you can reach out to me via email. I'd be happy to answer any questions. We do have a group net metering membership agreement that subscribers will sign. This is the agreement that lets you get out with 12 months notice. You can find a copy of that on this webpage. And then finally, your select board or whoever the local decision makers might need additional information in order to, decide whether or not this is a good decision. So, at some point you'll want to talk with them as well to see what other information they might need. And so that takes me to the end here. Again, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them now, or given the audio problems, maybe, you could, it might be more expeditious to either give me a call later or try over email as well. But I'm happy to see if I can answer some questions now as well.
Okay, well, I have some questions. Okay.
Yeah.
So Newmarket is on Eversource, and so we could participate, but what's the downside? Could we end up losing money? Could there be a case where we lose money, or we end up owing money?
No. So in terms of liability, if that's what you're asking about, I believe you would be totally insulated from that. Like we are the ones who are signing a contract with the developer. You're simply contracting with us. Yeah, I don't think there's downside from a liability perspective. From a financial perspective, it's really the same answer. Really, the only downside is if you were to sign up for this and then let's say within a few months you decided you wanted to put a PV system on the roof of one of the accounts, that would obviously reduce the amount of net load available to the project. And so that might create problems for the group as a whole. And in that case, you'd probably want to either revise the amount of load that's subscribed or maybe withdraw that account. And that's where this 12-month notice comes in. We'd like to have 12-month notice so that we can go out and find replacement subscribers if we need to for accounts that want to drop out for whatever reason. So I think really the only downside is like just maybe a slight lack of flexibility in terms of when you might add on-site generation or do some sort of deep energy retrofit that would reduce your load. But other than that, I don't see much downside.
Okay, so we can add, or we could change our load requirement annually, potentially, as we know things are coming on, correct?
Yeah. That's something that we will be looking at annually to make sure that the project or that each subscriber's load is pretty close to what we expected it to be. And if it's not, then I think we would have a conversation to figure out why that's not the case, and talk about potential remedies, whether that's reducing your share of the project or potentially withdrawing the account altogether. But there is that flexibility. Again, we asked for 12 months notice, but that is relatively short, at least within the industry. And generally, when you're doing these kind of capital improvements, you'll probably know 12 months in advance that you're going to do it anyway. So
Yeah.
hopefully that gives you enough time. Yeah.
Okay, so one more question. So Community Power is committing for like 20 years, is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
So what happens over this, as more and more solar comes online, doesn't the value of solar power go down, or the cost for solar go down?
So, theoretically, the cost of solar should go down over time. It has historically. For whatever reason, in New England here, it's certainly not as cheap as you hear about in the Western United States. Obviously, we have a resource that is not nearly as good. But also, the cost of land here is high as well. So solar costs have not declined as rapidly here as they have in other parts of the country or in other countries as well. We would expect the cost to decline, and you also mentioned the value of the solar could decline as more and more of it comes online. And it's a weather-dependent resource, not just weather-dependent, but dependent on the diurnal solar profile as well. And so what happens is you see a lot of solar generation kind of flooding the system midday, driving down wholesale prices, which does drive down the market value of solar. Running a project through the group net metering program insulates you from that value decline to some extent. You would feel it much more if you were basically buying or trying to sell your solar power into the wholesale market, the spot market. So yes, we are committing for 20 years, and we do recognize that there are some risks there. But I mentioned load settlement earlier. We're hoping that there will be some sort of fix for that in the future, which will allow us to kind of tap into some of the higher value that this project produces that we're not currently able to capture. So it's definitely kind of a moving target that we're going to keep our eyes on going forward.
I have a few other questions too, but some of them I want to save for thinking about. But one was just around the, if we were to enter into a project with you or become a,
I'm having a little trouble
Oh.
here. Could you?
Yeah. Is this any better?
A little better, yeah.
A little better?
If we were to enter into a contract with CNH, and, become an account, does the project, is there any geographic, like, proximity requirement, or is it anywhere in the state?
So the only requirement is that it has to be in the same utility service territory as, in this case, Newmarket. You guys are what, 100% Eversource? Or?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so Eversource obviously covers a big portion of the state. So, for example, the Garland Pit project is, way up in Conway, but Newmarket could subscribe to it.
Thank you. Another question around PPAs, and it sounds like you're focused specifically on 20-year. Is there any consideration for different tenors, or, I guess, and is the price, you said it's a fixed price, but is it, or a fixed contract, is there an escalator in your PPA? And I assume something that's negotiable.
Yeah, it is negotiable. The two contracts that well, one you signed, the other one we're negotiating, they're both fixed price, so no escalator. We did look at different terms. Developers typically want longer terms. They want to lock in the revenue for longer terms. But they did show us 15-year terms, but the pricing was higher. So you get a lower price if you go a little bit longer. But there's obviously more risk with going longer as well. So it's definitely a trade-off. One reason that we were comfortable with 20 years is it was sort of an attempt to differentiate ourselves a little bit because, as I mentioned, net metering is only on the books through 2040, so that's a 15-year term. But if we can offer a 20-year term, then we can potentially get a better price. I think that we have a little bit more negotiating power, or if we can move on one of the levers that we typically pull with respect to PPAs being price and term and escalator and things like that.
Thank you. I have one final quick question, and then it might result in like a sidebar later, but regarding your developers that you're working with, and specifically these two projects that are on gravel pits, which sound to me like have potential additional complexities when it comes to development. Is that true? And do you work with one specific developer that has some sort of expertise there, or are you looking for more projects like that? Just curious.
Yeah, so these projects are not official brownfields or anything like that. So there's no, to my knowledge, there's no government remediation requirements or anything like that they have to deal with. So in other words, they're not like superfund sites, which a lot of people are hesitant to touch. The developer that we work with on Poverty Plains is called Encore Renewable Energy. They're out of Vermont. They just so happen to also be the developer behind Garland Pit, which won the RFP that we had. So it's the same developer in both cases. I think they like working in gravel pits. And in fact, for the Poverty Plains project, they found that it was actually a good site from a development perspective in the sense that for whatever reason they were able to, I think Poverty Plains was maybe a little more sand pit than a gravel pit possibly, but they didn't have any problems with the racking, getting the pylons into the ground. They didn't run into an edge or anything like that. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, yeah, for sure. Does it result in a similar, acres per megawatt ratio that you see throughout the industry, which it varies, but 5 people per megawatt,
Yeah.
whatever?
Yeah, no, I think Poverty Plains will come in pretty typical there. Garland Pit is actually basically designed to be a single-axis tracking project, which is kind of results in a different sort of ground coverage ratio and different acres per megawatt ratio than we would normally see.
Thank you, Mark. I'll
Head it back to Joe. I don't know if anyone else had questions. Okay, yeah, I'll let Joe wrap up, but thanks again for your
Okay.
time.
Sure.
No other questions? Thank you very much, Mark. I apologize for the technical errors.
Yeah, no worries at all. Thanks for paying attention, for hanging in there. Joe, I assume you'll explore the deck, and if folks have any more questions, feel free to reach out.
Yes, I will forward the deck to everybody. I'm sure what the next steps will be, over the next couple of months, we'll talk about this a little bit more, and probably come back to, for another round of, okay, what does this mean, what do we have to do, type of thing.
Sure, that sounds great.
All right, thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you all.
All right.
Thanks, I'll drop off now. Bye-bye.
Okay, let me leave that. Thank you very much, appreciate it. I don't know, hope you learned a little bit, Bill. I specifically asked for you to be here because you had gotten that Kearsarge note, and before you commit to anything or do anything, I just wanted to make sure that you all had the same opportunity to do the same thing. Take it from there. What I would suggest is that the committee talk more about this and, develop some questions, and maybe at some point in time we might come up to you and maybe to Todd and on the school side, see if there's any interest on the school side of actually going ahead with this. Once we get a little bit more information, feel a little bit better about it. Does that seem reasonable?
We could even have, we have an energy procurement partner that we use, CES, for, and they could come and do a presentation for us as well. And I don't believe, for them, they're completely different. So they're not looking to pick one way or the other. We're just trying to give you, here's what the rules are in New Hampshire for doing this sort of thing. So that might be an interesting, nonpartisan view to it. So I could do that, arrange that, it's up to you guys.
absolutely.
Yep, yeah, I think it's terrific. Again, the main thing is it sounded like, okay, this sounds like we could potentially reduce our electric bills a little bit. That was the intent. And where we are, our community power, they get the requisitions. Hopefully, they get the requisitions, and it's less money that they have to spend on that side, and hopefully it's more money they can, put towards the, the consumer side. So hopefully it was kind of like a win-win type of thing.
Thanks for setting that up, Joe. That's really interesting. So I know you have a few other community power updates.
Do you want to introduce Chris and?
Yes, I can let her, but we have a new member as of, I guess this meeting, but as of, I don't know the official date, but, Chris is joining us from the Conservation Committee. And yeah, I'll just let you give your quick introduction.
Well, a quick introduction might be that I'm interested in, this is energy and environment, and a lot of the things I was interested in the Conservation Commission were on the environment side. The Conservation Commission has a lot of very complex things that it does, and I have thoroughly enjoyed those things. But I also serve on the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services statewide commission on waste management. So that side of things really appealed to me, or I thought those were things where I could be a team member and a contributor here for some of those topics. And when I look later on in this agenda, I see those are things that we do monthly in Concord with the DES. So that was kind of part of where I was coming from. So it's nice to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. One, I just note for coming out of the conversation we just had is specifically sand and gravel pits. I know we have some in Newmarket that were recently up for sale. I'd love to discuss that at some point if you're willing. I mean, I don't have a ton of knowledge on it, but just a point for a future discussion.
Yeah, I know that's an area that has been desired to be developed more than what it is now.
Yeah.
By many people. So sure it all comes down to what's the kind of most thing for the buck as a tax base as a town.
Yeah.
For that area to be developed, if this makes sense, if it reduces the tax liability of the town, and just more money in people's pocket versus say trying to get a developer to put in some kind of structure, whether it's commercial, residential, what have you.
Yeah.
But I know there's a desire to make better use of that area
Right.
for the town and its residents.
Yeah.
We tried stuff in the past. I wasn't on the planning board at the time, but they talked about trying things in the past of how to rezone that to make it more easy, appealing to developers, but to no success. So this is definitely something that maybe there's potential there.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if this developer that's already has experience on Corey Village has already seen it. I assume that Coleman, whatever the real estate database is called. Okay. Joe, do you wanna take us through any community power updates, any amendment that you're looking at?
Okay, a couple of things first then. So, Community Power has announced their new rates, the residential rates, effective residential and commercial rates, effective February 1st. So, Granite Basic, which is the basic supply that 98% of Newmarket residents that are on Community Power get. The rate for that basic is going to be 14.6 cents per kilowatt hour. It's an increase of 1.2 cents over the current Granite Basic rate. At the same time, effective February 1st, Eversource announced their rate, and their rate is going to be 11.3 cents. So basically, 3.3 cents less per kilowatt hour than what Community Power is going to offer. I do have some statistics, and I just got some stuff today to update it, but basically on what I had from before, previous 12 months, the average Newmarket resident uses 515 kilowatt hours per month. So based on that, at 13.4 cents, it's going to be basically, compared to what they pay right now, be basically a $6.18 per month increase over the current bill for those on Community Power, and compared to the 3.3 cents that they would save with Eversource, works out to be about $16.99 a month that they would save if they were with Eversource. I have posted things on Facebook, and it's in the town thing. If anybody wants to switch to go back to Eversource, there's a number that they can call. Just bring your have your Eversource account number. They will switch you over at no cost. You can do it anytime. So that brings us to the next thing. And I do have, I can pass this on to everybody. These are the actual rates. I don't know if you can see them. So it's 14.6 cents for Granite Basic. Granite Plus, which is 33%. Clean Energy is 15.6 cents. Clean 50 is 15.76 cents. And Clean 100 is 17.66 cents. Eversource does not offer Granite Plus or these higher levels of clean energy like we do. And something else that I got today that I'll compile together. We have maybe like 14 or 15 people in Newmarket that are on either Granite Plus or Clean 100, and those 15 people saved 208 tons of CO2 from going into the atmosphere because they have a higher level. I'll get that all compiled and pass that to everybody with the minutes that I mean. So that brings up the next question. I am, on the town council, and I'm the representative to Community Power. And up to this point, I've been kind of like making decisions and telling people about it. Okay, and I've said at the last meeting that should really change. It really should be. We are not only electric, we are Energy and Environment Committee, but we are also the named Electric Aggregation Committee. It's our responsibility to monitor Community Power to make recommendations to the town council. So I am coming to you tonight with, to ask for your vote or whatever. There is going to be a refresh of customers in Newmarket. And basically, a refresh is when people in Newmarket, they're on community power, they leave their apartment, the new person that comes in is automatically defaulted back to Eversource. Community power on a rolling basis, every now and then, will do what's called a refresh. Basically, they send out a letter to people and say, we are going to enroll you into community power. If you don't want to be enrolled, here's the number to call to not be enrolled. And in that note, and I don't have a copy of what the note looks like, but in that note, it basically says, here's what the rate for Eversource is going to be, here's what the rate for community power is going to be, so people do have the choice. The amendment that we did recently for the electric aggregation plan was to allow Newmarket to say, if there's a rate difference, significant rate difference of more than 2 cents, it allows Newmarket to say, we don't want to participate in this upcoming refresh. Community Power's planning to do a refresh this coming March. The new rate just came out, it's 3 cents higher. That triggers that particular action. My recommendation is that we allow them to go ahead with the refresh, or we tell them, yes, we'll participate. Again, the letter that goes out to everybody will say, here's the rate for community power, here's the rate for Eversource. If you want to stay with Eversource, do that. So I'm asking for your vote or whatever to say, what do you want to do? Do you agree with that we should let the refresh go ahead, or do you want to say, no, we don't want to participate? And I'll turn that over to you.
Well, can you explain your rationale for why you would like to allow CPA and CNH to proceed?
I guess, it does offer community power some financial, I don't know what the correct term is, but it gives them additional money, it helps them retire some debt, and puts us in a position to do projects like the gravel pit here and do some other things. Okay, it allows them to continue. That's the main, I guess, reasons. It's a financial thing, helps community power out. Community power helps us out in the long run. As I said, we do offer other products that Eversource doesn't.
So it helps CPCNH at technically no cost to Newmarket residents, and they are obviously, it's at their own behest to opt out, right? But
Correct.
we can notify them.
Correct.
Well, so the default is that community power is going to do the refresh. So we would be intervening in what is the normal process if we were to say hold up on that refresh. Is that an accurate?
If we would say hold up on the refresh, they just would not notify Newmarket residents and would not enroll them into.
Yeah, I'm saying the normal process is they do this refresh regardless of us weighing in or not. Right?
That's correct.
That is their
what
business.
Prior to that, they would just do a refresh and usually didn't have an option to say we don't want to participate.
Yeah, so that no action from us is the status quo from them.
That's right.
Does a refresh have to happen on an annual basis? If we decide to opt out of the refresh this year, does that refresh happen March of the following year, or does it happen?
It happens on a rolling basis. It just, they didn't do one last year because of financial issues. So it's really just kind of like when they feel that there's been a large turnover of people, and it would be to the benefit to do that. It costs them, obviously money to do all the mailings and do all that. So,
would it be possible for us as a community power aggregator to notify Community Power Coalition when we would want that refresh delivered?
I suppose we could do that, but they're probably going to say, no, we do it for everybody as opposed to just individual towns. That's correct. They're doing it for all towns.
Oh, so it's all towns. I see.
Yes.
So this would happen in March.
Yes.
So this, we're January for this meeting. There's still a February meeting,
Mhm.
and then it would happen in March. Is there a chance
We
that?
have to let them know by the end of January whether we want to proceed or not.
Oh, gotcha. My concern is about the actual letter. Is there a way we can see a copy of the letter, or is?
I can, I have I can potentially get a copy, I don't know when, but yeah, I could.
Well, my concern about the letter is, when I look at the overall population here, and you mentioned like, okay, you're in this apartment, you move, somebody else comes in, they're refreshed, who's getting this letter? I'm concerned about things, very, I don't know what the right word to say is, interpersonally, like the reading level of the letter, the graphics of the letter, the potential obfuscation. Like, I know warrant articles are written this way, and they're not run through a generator that says, oh, this is a so-and-so reading level, but those things are very important. So you get this thing, it looks like a form letter. I'm gonna read it later, I'm too busy now, I'm a little bit nervous about reading, da-da-da. They don't do it. They didn't really have a fair opportunity to even have a chance to reconcile what that letter meant to them. So I think it'd be beneficial for us to kind of see, and at least say we had a sense of what did it look like, and how was it written and generated. I don't know what community power does to write those kind of letters. But certainly the readability of it and the tone and timbre of it seems to me to be really important.
Well, I can pretty much guarantee that in there's going to be a lot of glowing things about community power. Okay, but, yes, my family, I know, we often get mail, stuff like that, it'll either just immediately get tossed or it'll get put in a pile and we won't look at it. But it does have to say in there, here is, very clearly states, here is what Eversource's rate's gonna be, here is what our rate is. You have an option to opt out. Okay, and it's a simple option. You just call the number and give them your account number.
I do remember when they first switched us over in those, but when they sent them out the first, we all got enrolled in the town, voted on that. It's been a couple of years, but I think it was pretty straightforward on there, if I remember correctly. Not to say this one's any better or worse, I haven't seen it either. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this letter is kind of like an initial change. After that, I mean, can they disenroll from community power at any point?
And yes, anybody can disenroll from community power at any point. Just there's obviously he has to wait till the next meter reading, okay, for them to get off that. But you can enroll and there's no charge for switching.
That being said, I'm sure a lot of people like me, where it's like you set it and you forget it, and it is what it is. I don't like go there and shop around my utility rate from time to time. And so obviously there's an opportunity for, as a consumer and as a resident, like they're probably wanting the cheapest option. I think that's what most people go towards. And so are we allowing them to pursue that, or making it hard for them to kind of do what's in their best interest? I don't have enough information to say that, and we've, as a town, have agreed to enter in this partnership with the company, and they're running their business. So to me, telling them not to do something that they're already doing for the whole state is kind of a significant action to take as a town that I wouldn't be comfortable doing just like kind of willy-nilly unless you kind of understand the ramifications of that. So part of me is wanting to just say, let them proceed with how they're running their business. We've agreed to partner with them, and so who are we as one town to say don't do what is part of your routine business model? So I'd probably be in favor of just letting them continue to do the refresh, knowing that consumers have their residence. Can change either that time or any future time if they want to switch out, because obviously there's a lower rate, but there's also benefits that some people may want to pay more money for, like the solar 100, right? It's each resident has to make that decision for themselves, and I don't want to make that decision for them, which rate is already done that once the town when we enrolled them.
Yeah, I've been flip-flopping in my head over here for the past 5 minutes or so, but I think at the end of the day, it does pare down to customer choice, and that is really what community power or what the managers is advocating for. It's not their responsibility to provide the cheapest rates, it's their enabling choice for individual residents. So even though that does come at the base does come higher than Eversource, consumers still do have the choice to opt into the Eversource
Yeah, you're not sacrificing the choice, because we could just say as a town, we're not gonna be in community power, period. And
Right.
it's, the default is Eversource. And
Yeah,
the default is,
yeah.
you're in whatever Eversource charges. It could be higher tomorrow, it could be lower tomorrow. It's the same thing where we provide a default as a town, and then if you wanna pursue something cheaper, or, you know, whatever it is, we're kind of at the whims of where we're at. It's not Eversource right now, it was Eversource before.
Right.
And so we made a conscious decision as a town to switch to community power, thinking it would better ourselves. So if all of a sudden we're only ever chasing the cheapest default rate for the residents, then we should be continually voting on whether we're in community power or not as a town, right? If that's really what, and I don't think that makes sense. Every 3 months we're gonna like, all right, take us out, it'll put us back in.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make sense to chase that. So I hear what you're saying. It's like,
Yeah.
I want them to have the cheapest rate, but also there's the consequence of, as a town, we decided to join this instead of just staying out of it and letting each individual decide, I'm gonna be an Eversource or not. So we made it our problem to weigh that constantly.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you too, that by allowing this refresh to happen as planned too, it's almost an indicator for that choice as well, because if not, you know, yes, people will opt in on their own, there's no notification, there's no gateway for that to happen in the first place, so
Yeah.
I tend to agree that if that's the stance we've taken 2 years ago or whenever we first entered this agreement with the Community Power Coalition, that that's probably where we should remain, so long as it's coupled with an active
Yeah.
response from us and us giving us some personal responsibility to, you know, get the word out in a way, so.
Yeah. How many people do we know would be included in this refresh? Do we know how many new turnovers, I don't know what the right term is?
Yeah, I do have some stats to go over of how many people are active. I don't know exactly how many would be.
'Cause it's not like the whole town is getting these letters.
It would
About the way
be
you
around,
described it.
it'd be, I think it would be around 1,000, I believe.
That's a lot.
Okay.
But don't you want most of the town to get it, to be aware of the?
Well, it sounds like this is for new people, so like I just bought a house, you know, I just got a lease, whatever it is, I'm a new, like, at that unit property, energy consumer gets the letter, is how I understood Joe's explanation. And so it would just be it's like when you enter your first contract, you get your choice. In this case, we're saying this is the default, but you do have a choice, so you can make it now.
I do have some updated stats. Do you want to maybe go through that first and then circle back to that question?
I guess part of it is like I'm curious, but also I don't want, oh, well, if it's 5 people, then it's okay. If it's not okay, it's not okay for, you know, whoever, as you're voting, right? I don't want it to feel like.
Yeah, there's no cutoff number.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. So I'm curious, but I don't necessarily think that changes my opinion on the outcome.
I think I tend to agree with Joe's point of letting the refresh happen as normal, and then we can include the 1,000 or so new residents to, you know, with the letter in hand, to make the choice on whether to opt in or opt out of CNH.
I agree. What, when do we have to make this decision by?
We're supposed to let them know by the end of January.
Okay, so it would be, couldn't hold this vote until, or wait, postpone this vote until next week. Okay. Which would give us time to get an example of a letter. It sounds like, I think like two kind of exhaustive comments that they have the option. They can
What I can
opt in.
do, I'll ask them, actually, I'm gonna be there tomorrow. If we can get an early sample of what the letter looks like and pass that around, and if there's some.
I would say, I didn't have the background or the thought process of it's their business model. So although I do still want to register the concern I have for what does the letter look like, I don't think I think I understand a little bit more about your point. And I can say I'm not elated about it, but it's an agreement you made the agreement, there you go, you hold the agreement. I think with the caveat of there's other vehicles, be it the Facebook page or Tim Crimmon's ability to put articles and news bulletins in the e-news and whatnot, I think that's a way to help clarify. Probably in ways that reflect a little bit back on Bill's point about the company coming from Portland, Maine that's non-biased, being able to give us more information. I think, like this is not a warrant article we're writing, so you would be able to say things in Facebook or the townwide newsletter that says, this is this, and here's some It's tough to be unbiased, but here's some unbiased things that we want you to think about if you get this letter. Because the other thing that's gonna happen is these people got the letter, these people didn't get the letter, this guy says, why didn't I get a letter, da-da-da. So you're really explaining it's the new turnovers got the letter, because the power of Joe Public chit-chatting to Joe Public at a social event or a church event or in line in Newberry Farms or whatever is pretty high too. So who got a letter and why, I think, is a constructive thing to put out there.
Yeah, I think to Chris's concern, is there something we should be doing as a committee? If this, because I know you've just given a couple presentations now on Community Power, and I know they had some financial struggles, and I understand the merits of joining with them and the kind of their vision statement. But at the end of the day, we also have a duty to our customer, we're their customer, to our town residents, right? Constituents, to do what's in their best interests, and obviously there's many variables to that, but their wallet, their checkbook, is a big part of that. And so I want to help Community Power, and I understand their vision statement, and I think what they're doing is good in the long run, and I know a lot of towns join them for that reason, but they're not my constituent, right? So maybe as a committee, is there something we can do to look at, is there things we can do for education to help people make the change if they don't value that mission statement instead of bringing them along, because they do have that choice? Is it exiting Community Power for right now until the arrangement is more suited to us? I don't know what that is, but maybe that's kind of where we should be investing some more energy moving forward if they continue to be, appreciably 25% almost higher than Eversource. And I can't predict what they're going to be in 3 months, 6 months, a year. I know there's some risk there, that they'll come down eventually, Eversource will come up. I know fluctuations happen in price, but.
Yeah, and I think it's maybe up to this committee to kind of set those, what is that materiality threshold for when we would make a decision such as that. So, right now it's kind of willy-nilly. It's, what if we, it's all based on anecdotal. We don't have any set thresholds, is what I'm saying. Second part of my point was with regard to Chris's comment about accessibility of those letters, and I can only speak anecdotally. I wish I had the letter right in front of me. Having been one of those folks who have received the letter during the last refresh, I will say was clearer and informative as well, and for the most part unbiased, I would say, despite not coming directly from CDC Nation. So hopefully that might appease some feelings around accessibility of the information being presented. So.
Okay, so I can tell them, as far as the Newmarket is concerned, we're okay with doing a refresh.
But maybe we should, for February, at least start thinking about what those thresholds look like. How many, rate refreshes can go by with increased rates before we decide, okay, this isn't a situation that is benefiting the town.
I will say it's Community Power's belief, that we are alleging that Eversource at this point is still under collecting on their supply side, and that they're going to have to make it up. There's legislation to make them do that on a rolling 6-month basis. Right now they kind of put it off. So our first 12 months of operation with Community Power, we saved Newmarket residents $104,000 compared to Eversource's rates. That has since been eroded during 2025, but we do have the history of doing that.
Yeah, not eroding its entirety either. So I mean, maybe that's the kind of cutoff point, right? At what point are we approaching when we are no longer saving our constituents money? Maybe that is the point at which we consider evacuating from this program. But so long as net over since we started the program, we've managed to save what we said $104,000 for Newmarket residents and utility bills. Even if one year is worse than the other, it's still a net savings since the program's inception. So I think so long as we don't go in the opposite direction, concerns.
Yeah, I don't want to overreact, but I also want to react. I don't want to just be like, oh, well, Community Power is what it is, we're helpless. Like, we're not. We voted to join them, we can vote to exclude them, or we can do other things. So I've never really thought about it until now and forced that conversation, so it's
Likewise.
definitely something that's, I think, should be on our brains more intentionally to kind of confront what that means to be in community power as a town. I think people are just like, great, we'll join, it'll be cheaper, and hunky-dory binders, and now it's like, oh, well, maybe we should actually be thoughtful about that relationship on an ongoing basis with them.
Okay, we're pushing 90 minutes here, so let's move on. And do you want to take us to a vote?
Let me just, no, I don't think we need to do a vote, I think
You're
we're
good?
fine with all that.
Okay.
I do have just a couple of statistics to go with community power, and then we can move on, just for what you have. Okay, so I get a bunch of different spreadsheets, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to put information from different places together into one spot to make it cohesive and understandable, but this is what I got, anyway. Okay, so as of March 1st, there are 5,644 meters in Newmarket, 3,513 are on Newmarket Community Power for 62.20% participation rate in Newmarket. Compared to last month, it was 63.40%. During the month, we added 19 accounts, but we removed 56. And a lot of that is because people move or whatever. Of those 3,000 people, 3,500 people that we have, 170 people have opted into Newmarket Community Power. 17 have opted up to a higher level of energy, and since inception, 150 people have opted out. So we've had more people opt in than actually opt out. And then here's just some of the reasons why people are not in community power. There's 194 accounts that are net metered, 150 have opted out, and total non-participating people is roughly about 2,000. Unenrolled defaulting notice, I will show what that is. So bottom line is, we've gone from 63% participation down to 62% in the last month. So that's what I've got for community power.
Another idea for future discussion is how can Newmarket and this committee help increase that 154 or whatever number it is net meter accounts. How can Newmarket incentivize residential solar? Because there's no federal incentive in that. That obviously doesn't help CPCH, but help individual residents. Okay, we're on to what I was most excited for today. Lindsay's update from SolSmart on feasibility studies for renewable energy projects.
To be fairly brief, because we don't yet have the summary report, so I don't want to, I was considering putting some of the slides and being able to show what we did with the concept, but I also kind of got stung showing the concept a little too early and people got up in arms. So, I'm holding on to them for now. But SolSmart has started to look at and develop some preliminary plans for our 5 priority sites that we identified. And their assessment that they're doing and the summary report memo that they're going to give us with cost estimates is free to us through Clean Energy New Hampshire, roughly $20,000 to $30,000 effort that they're going through. So it's great that we're taking advantage of this and getting this assessment solar feasibility study from them. So the sites that we are looking at are the DPW fire station. We already have solar lit at the fire station, but we're looking at how we could maximize the roof space with the understanding that we need to reinforce and upgrade the roof if we go forward with it. But this will give us an understanding of what kind of power generation we can get there. And they're also incorporating our energy usage, annual energy additional generation, we did those and cost estimates for the carports. And then for town hall, it was a consideration of carport on the parking lot in the back, not touching any of the front, but if we do have opportunity to have that. And I think in their memo, they will be breaking it out as separate, so there'll be the roof mount portion, as far as energy generation, how many panels could fit and what kind of energy generation we could get for the roof versus the carport, so that they can consider somewhat separately. You could say, right, mix the carport and what can we get for just the roof piece. So those are the three. Community center, primarily looking at roof for the community center building, but also taking a look at the field area that's just before it. It's just sometimes used for parking during the backyard bash, but not field, not athletic field, and not necessarily specifically used for any other use, so that could potentially be one option. So they added that one in there. And then big one that we've been talking about with the school probably is the parcels of land that the school districts and the town own that's across the street from the junior senior high school, where the parking lot is located, and then the field area behind that. So they laid out a fairly large ground-mounted solar array option, while also leaving some space available for potential athletic field development that could be behind the parking lots in the solar array field. So that's another one that they're going to look at. And with that and the community center, there's opportunity for interconnection between the two, and obviously opportunity for connection with the junior senior school to use behind the meter, to have the behind the meter usage at the site and get away with it. So those are the three. They're Clean Energy New Hampshire has this funding through the end of January, so they will be wrapping up their summary memo, and should be able to provide that to us within the next week or two. And once we have that, and we can take a look at that between town and school, then we can share that with the committee for discussion information, see with Clean Energy New Hampshire, if they're aware of what kind of grant funding opportunities are out there, what, if anything, we want to start pursuing or advancing, and they'll have some budgetary numbers for each of those that we can use going forward, which puts us in a better position to seek some grant funding or other, see what's out there. You can't do that if you don't have an idea of what we're doing. Now we have a short list of ideas of things that we can put forward, so I'm excited to put that one out.
Is there any discussion, or were they considering batteries among any of those, or car chargers?
Not specifically in the cost estimate. We did talk about EV chargers and I mentioned batteries, but with this, it's more to see what we could do for energy generation and like maximize the area, and then if we want to incorporate that stuff as we get into an actual design, then we can do that. So it won't be incorporated in this piece.
Got it. Okay.
So I thought we had ruled the school parking lot out, but you're saying even with doing a field and everything, that there's still a potential to do something there?
Potentially, yes. It would be, I mean, this is all conceptual. It's taking a look at what there is for area. The carport over the existing parking lot is an option, or if the parking lot and part of that parcel can be developed for a field, athletic field or some sort of athletic complex component, then the solar could be incorporated in that.
Would they do that?
That portion, yeah.
Go ahead. Yes, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, one of the things that we're working on at the district level is an RFP to get the more of an engineering study done for the athletic field side of it, so we can know with certainty where that would need to go and what it costs.
What size
And
it would
obviously,
be.
the proposal that's drafted needs flexibility for areas of the group.
Great. Yeah, I
That's
was
interesting.
excited to hear that. Made moves on that RFP for that.
to open up or broadcast to the town that we're having this discussion, or is it still too early stage? Like to invite members of the community to join.
I'd say it too early at
I
this
would
point.
say it's early, yeah.
Fair enough.
I can see Facebook lighting up now.
Okay.
I would tell you that in the next month or so, I'll be bringing a proposal to the board for the RFP to do the study of the athletic project. And at that point, I will definitely talk publicly about the possibility of the solar array
Yeah.
being part of that. And we had like some conversation with those people about that possibility.
How have those conversations gone?
The board's enthusiastic.
Good. All right. Thank you, Lindsay. I had a few non-updates on our other sort of mandate for the year, which is reduce, reuse, recycling. So recycling improvements. One is getting a sign at the transfer station for better recycling practices there. Finally spoke with Rick, so hopefully we'll get some signs in there soon. And then the other items really that are pressing, hopefully I'll get to this between now and next meeting, is connecting with the high school and the net zero group, and then looking at the waste guide, which I think I want to connect with the conservation committee on, because I know they're working on a version of that. So more updates to come on that, but not a ton of progress in the last month. Segueing into a potential joint meeting with the Conservation Commission. I don't know if George had any input there of a potential, knowing the agendas for the next few months, I think you have them for Conservation Commission, which one might make sense for us to join.
Yeah, that is a good question. I will bring it to our next meeting during February in hopes of, and I think that meeting will come before this meeting is scheduled in February,
Okay.
ideally, if it follows the same cadence roughly. as-
Yeah, we're gonna move back probably to the end of the month. We'll get to that too, but
Great, yeah, that's good to know. So definitely we'll bring it in then. Obviously, we've had some churn with Chris now departing her role as chair of that committee, and now Ellen's going to be the chair of that committee now. So a little bit of moving around of pieces, so we'll be able to bring it there. But Conservation Commission is excited to be asking this committee for participation in Turtle Fest of this year. I think there's a really great case for including some solid waste discussions, especially in that mix of programming, especially as it expands more. It's not just turtles now.
Well, it's habitat oriented, right?
Right.
So, and the part of the charter statewide for conservation commissions is protection of clean water. That's one of their bulleted points. So if you have this garbage here flowing downhill there, hydrology notwithstanding, you're gonna make a mess. So, we make messes. So I think that there's a real wonderful chance to have a visibility board, some kind of table, booth, stand, not a presentation other than, difference this year is gonna be the perimeter, the big auditorium will have all kind of display booths, affiliated organizations, similar organizations, so I think some kind of table there could be really beneficial. That could be even a time to go ahead and say, here's some information about, about power. Who knows? I don't wanna say what it's gonna be, we can talk about what it's gonna be, but just what are some charges here, what are some visibility issues, and what's some outreach you'd like to put into it here.
And I'm sure everyone in this committee can think of ways that everything we do here interconnects with the mission of the Conservation Commission. So
Yeah.
I think maybe a next step in that regard would be connecting with Zach Anthony, who's kind of, to my knowledge, tearing up the most of the Turtle Fest planning.
He's on the subcommittee of Turtle Fest. Lindsay's on the subcommittee.
Oh.
Bart's on the subcommittee.
Great. So
I would say when the T-shirts are available, everybody here could buy one of the T-shirts.
what do the proceeds go towards?
The proceeds, in fact, go toward, they pick last year the proceeds all went to New Hampshire Turtle Rescue League.
Amazing.
So this year, there will be some proceeds for that organization, as well as, we're still talking about it, but as well as Tailwinds, which is a rescue league for, I was gonna say falcons, but that's one of the aspect of it. But predominantly birds of prey and other things bird-related with rehab of birds, injured birds, bird awareness. So there's where all the proceeds of the T-shirts go. You will like it. It's designed by John Herman, so it's another art piece that you can put in your collection of John Herman art on T-shirts.
just moving around.
Yeah.
So I think that'll probably be the most natural kind of marriage of these two, this advisory committee and that commission, so.
So do you want me to reach out to you and you can connect me with Zach?
Yeah, that sounds like a great, or I'll keep you plugged in as to when it might make sense for you to step in as a guest.
Yeah.
Or remember,
I can
at
try
the
to
next
join.
meeting, then we can consider doing like what a joint meeting might look like during
That sounds
that meeting as well, so. And I'll bring it up with Ellen just to make sure the agenda's not gonna be too loaded, so we don't,
Yeah.
try to do like 10 PM or something of the rather, so. But February, I think, sounds like a natural time for us to begin having that conversation, so. Yeah.
Yeah, we're about 43 minutes past my target.
Oops.
Yeah.
But for good reason. Okay, yeah, speaking of scheduling the next meeting, but we typically, is it the third Wednesday? Is that our early?
Third or fourth Wednesday, yeah, it was originally the third Wednesday, at one point we had moved it to the
Okay.
fourth.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great to see you. So yeah, we can stick with February 18th. That doesn't immediately not work for people.
Isn't that council?
First and third Wednesdays are
Yeah.
town council.
First and third Wednesdays. So 25th?
Yeah, it was either
And
the
would your
fourth
hope be
Wednesday or
that
the
that's a
last.
constant? Are you saying you hope to have every fourth Wednesday? Or do you how from meeting to meeting and pick your next meeting?
I mean, ideally, it's the same Wednesday of every month. And I think
That's what it had been until we got to holiday time, where all of the last Wednesdays.
It used to be the fourth
Goofy.
Wednesday of the month.
okay, the fourth. Yeah,
And
sorry.
then we changed it to the last for some reason or other, which.
I see. So yeah.
They're the third Thursday.
Third Thursday, so we should.
No, I lied, because look at what you just had. Was January 8th, second Thursday.
Second Thursday.
Yeah.
So should I
So we're
say
set.
the fourth,
Wait.
the fourth Wednesday maybe of every month?
Yeah.
Generally
Yeah,
speaking,
I think
of course
that's a
we
good
can
goal.
change it.
Yeah.
That's what it had been.
Okay.
That would be easy to go back to.
Right.
Well, no other committee was formed that will hog that date, so.
Yeah, exactly.
If you said the fourth, and I don't know how much it matters, but that is the school vacation week. I don't know if that affects anybody here saying they're going on their exciting world cruise that week, but,
Kidless, so,
Yeah.
okay.
Ditto.
I mean, it's
So-
already on the schedule for the February 25th Energy and Environment. So.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I've seen that too. Okay, so we're gonna stick with the 25th.
Great.
So that would make
And
March
works.
25th, would be the fourth.
Yep.
April 22nd would be the fourth Thursday. We said the fourth
Wednesdays.
Thursday, not the last Thursday.
I like
Wednesday.
fourth Wednesday. Yeah, we can, it's on there for the fourth Wednesday. Then. And change as needed.
That'll occur after Conservation Commission. That's the second Wednesday, is that what you? second
Thursdays is
Thursday?
Conservation Commission.
So February 12th. I can try to join that one.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll make sure to give information and I'll reach out to Alan and Zach to make sure that they do the conference.
Yeah.
So, great.
And meanwhile, it sounds like let officially that it's gonna be some kind of booth or table space for turtle fest,
Yep.
just so that we can work with buildings and grounds to know how many tables to even set up.
Right, and that'll be part of my remarks as far as on the dates and sides, so.
Any other business or comments to discuss? I did, not to everyone, no. I just sent it to Wendy.
Good to share that with everybody.
Okay. Yeah, so basically Joe wrote it and I made some very minor edits, but, maybe, I guess going forward, that might be on me for that, but, we have to write our annual report to the town council.
Mhm.
Right? Just summarizing what the committee worked on in the prior year and goals for the next year. And it was just about a one-page report that I shared with them. So I will circulate that.
Is that for the town report?
I think so.
The
yeah.
annual report
So
you're talking about.
that's what gets published in like the town report.
Oh, in the book?
Yeah.
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 Oh, okay. Sweet.
You should have known.
Published.
Yeah, you should have known who your audience was for what you were
Taking
writing.
advantage, yeah.
Mhm.
Put some more
And 2 photos are allowed.
Yeah, we didn't do any photo. I don't know. I mean, I think I took like one from the
From
some- yeah, but
summit kind of
yeah, maybe we'll get one from Turtle Fest for next year. I guess we did do when did anyone here go to the tour?
Probably.
Yeah.
Oh, that would
I
be
think
a
it was
good
just
one.
the three of us.
Yeah, although I don't know.
It was dark.
It was so dark.
It was a dark winter night, a dark and stormy night.
Yeah. Yeah, it was late October.
Even just a picture of who you are is nice to
So,
put.
that, I guess, one other final point, and I think I've mentioned this, but like a mini internal only Facebook thing, like just a Word document that has like a bio and, a picture, or, you know, bio if you want, doesn't have to be. But I shared an example of that with Joe for just, you know, but cool, I wrote one for myself, but, I thought that would be helpful for people, just to reference, not something that would go public.
Just to share among the committee. so you
Yes,
can
yeah.
Have a reference for each other, yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So, I think I said I was gonna share that around there, so, I'll do that. All right, I think with that, we can adjourn.
Thank you so much.
We owe a thank you to Tim for the sweat he must have been feeling on the bridge of his nose from the tech stuff.
I'll do it anyways, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Yeah.
All in favor, indicate by putting your coat on.